Can you make your own self happy? Can you take good care of yourself? Because, so many relationships really go wrong when someone is already unhappy within themselves.
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the How to Relationship podcast, the podcast where we, talk to couples and find out how they are able to make their relationships last. I'm your host, Anaís Lucia. On today's episode, we have Natasha and Jáchym. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm always so worried I'm not going to pronounce it right, but they're a really great couple and they've been through quite a bit in their relationship. But I hope you get as much out of this conversation as I did. I really just love talking to them. So enough of me. Let's get right into the interview. Welcome, Jáchym and Natasha, to the How to Relationship podcast. I'm so sorry if I messed up your name. I'm trying my best.
No, it was quite good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I like to start off before I ask you guys their questions, if you could let the audience know, how long you've been together as a couple and how long you've been married.
Right. So actually yesterday was our anniversary. So we've been together for 11 years by now and married for 7.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And you guys I'm in the US and you are on the other side of the world, right?
Yeah, we're in Malaysia at the moment.
Oh, nice. I did check out your, some of your content and everything. And what I thought was really interesting was, because I think you are my first couple that I've had on that has like different types of relationships. So I definitely want to get a little bit more into that. Just because, I'm curious and I'm sure some people listening probably are curious about it too. But I wanted to start off from the beginning about, just like your story, like your origin story, how you met and how you got together.
Yeah. We actually have a pretty incredible story of how we met because we really weren't supposed to. Because Jáchym is Swiss, right? When I met him, he was a Swiss guy, and I'm Canadian, born in Hong Kong, but grew up in Canada. So when we met, we were both flying from totally different places. He was coming from the States. I was coming from Canada. I was going to Paris. He was going to Switzerland. So we only crossed paths because we were both supposed to transfer at the London Heathrow Airport. And so luck would have it, it snowed just a tiny little bit and the whole airport shut down. Nothing was flying. We both missed our flights. Everything was canceled. And we were stuck for at least 3 days in London. And we spent all 3 days and nights together because I sat down next to him. Like, it was really strange. And there was nothing to do but to wait until a flight could be booked again. So, yeah, when we first met, it was really under this stressful circumstance where everyone was really freaking out. To give you a bit of context, we met on the 18th of December. And the first night we actually slept on the floor of the airport thinking, like innocently back then, that the next morning everything will go back to normal. They'll find our luggage and we'll just be on our way. But it turns out that nothing was going anywhere. So he said to me, okay, I need a shower. Like, I'm jet lagged. I need a shower. I need to sleep. I'm going to go to central London. You can come with me or you stay here on your own at the airport. And for me, it was my first time ever in Europe. And I thought to myself, this stranger hasn't killed me yet. He hasn't stolen money from me. I think I'd rather have a companion in this crazy time. So we went to central London and we just there was nothing to do. So we went to the museum, we went to the art gallery, we had Chinese food. So that's pretty much what happened. And like you said, our relationship really did take different forms, because right after that meeting of just a few days, yes, there was a connection, but we really walked away thinking, all right, okay, like, thanks for being nice, and like, thanks for keeping me company, thanks for giving me comfort. But now we're home, wherever we are, on different continents, different time zones. But we kept in touch. And about 6 months after that, we saw each other again. He actually came to see me in Canada, because through all the emails, and it was back in the day where it's like, I don't know, GChat and email, and we weren't even doing video calls really. Things got a bit strange. We thought that we had feelings for one another, but we weren't sure, because you never know what you kind of project on, I don't know, text or something like that. So once we met, it was real. We felt something. So we said, okay, now we're in a long distance relationship. So, then the long distance relationship lasted for almost 3 years before I actually moved to Switzerland. So quite a journey.
Yeah.
And really different people when we first met. Like, we've grown a lot since then.
Oh wow, that's such a cute story. I feel like it's something that you could definitely make a movie out of. It just really shows you, like, I don't know, how kind of crazy life is. Sometimes you never know the person that. So I'm curious. Okay, so who sat next to who? Like, who was seated first, and then who started the conversation first?
Yeah. I sat down next to him. He was already there. He was in the arrivals area. I had my little carry-on. And this is the funniest thing. I was about to turn away from that seat. I really was. I actually physically turned away from it, ready to leave it, because I thought, well, if I take it, because at that time I was really quite stressed. And I thought, okay, I just need to calm down, maybe have something to eat, and then call my aunt again. I was actually trying to visit my aunt in Paris. And so I saw that free seat, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I should, just put my luggage there, ask the person who's sitting next to kind of look after it. And then my mom's voice kind of just like ran in my head, like, don't leave your belongings with strangers. And I'm like, oh, no, I shouldn't do that. So at that moment, that voice came in my head. I turned around, ready to walk away, but I saw a really, really big Indian family walking towards me. And then something clicked, because it was like, wait, this is not a normal situation. Everybody's stuck here. Nothing is flying. You take this seat or it's gone. So like, you just better like ask that person to save it for you, leave your luggage there. So that's what I did. So did I ask you?
No, you didn't. I was the one sleeping.
Yeah, I asked the person next to him, actually. I asked someone who was awake if he could look after it. It was all good. I went to get something to eat, came back. So he was this like almost like gray matter, like a person who's nodding off, right? Not even awake, not interacting with me. First conversation was with the guy next to on the other side of my seat, not to him. But once I sat down, I was like munching on my coleslaw or something, and then he's like, hey, you stuck here? I'm like, yes, you too. Where you going? And but I woke him up. That's the unpleasant surprise.
And did you kind of feel something, like, did you feel like a connection kind of like instantly, or did it take a while? Or
it took a while. It was not like there was a connection, as in we're in the same situation, but it was not like there's a romantic connection right away or anything like that. And I mean, you're in there and you're not really thinking about this stuff, and especially like the first night, the floor is out of stone and marble and it's cold, so it's really uncomfortable, and you haven't showered for I don't know how long, so it may look nice on a movie screen, but when you're in it, it's uncomfortable and you're tired and all of that, which is why the next day I was like, I gotta go and just like get somewhere to just rest, because it was supposed to fly and we're queuing for like 4 hours, thinking that we're going to get away from London and get to our destinations, and then they just canceled everything again, and we're like, oh, this is now hotel booking line. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to wait for an hour to book a hotel. my mom always traveled, just just go to the place and find something. So I was like, I'm just going to go to London and I'll find something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you did end up like being in a long distance relationship. So when did you, for those who are listening who may not know you, I know you guys like tried, polyamory and semi-open relationships and things like that. Did you do that while you were in the long distance relationship, or when did all that happen? And if you could.
Right, that was both. I mean, so we did have an open relationship during the long distance relationship, and then it didn't quite work. So we're like, okay, let's do a semi-open relationship. And Tasha wasn't quite comfortable with the open one. So I was like, it's fine with me. You can do what you want, and I won't. And we went through different phases with that. We had a close relationship when Natasha moved into, to Switzerland. And then we went through other phases again with a more of an open relationship and polyamorous relationship. And we just realized it wasn't for us. For us, what we realized is that it easily leads into what we call a pleasure trap. That, you're looking for the next kick of pleasure. Yes, there's the newness. Yes, there's the pleasure of being with someone else and all of that. But where's the richness and the depth and the fulfillment within that? Because you see, pleasure only can go so high, like, you take the most amazing day in your life. To top that, you have to, I don't know, let's say it was getting a car. To top that, you have to get a better car or a yacht or a plane or whatever. We will never have that first car ever again. And so that's the trap of seeking pleasure this way. It's never ending, really.
Like you'll never really be kind of satisfied or happy or kind of.
Well, it's not happiness, because pleasure is just pleasure. It's not happiness. And that's what people confuse is that, we think, I feel pleasure and I'm satisfied for a week or 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is, but then it starts all over again. And so there's a depth that you can find, which is actually joyous. It's not a spike. It's not a spike like pleasure is, but it is continuous and has so much more depth and fulfillment. And that is why we turned away from this whole thing, is because, first of all, we realized we were hurting each other with it. And there were certain patterns as well playing out, which we can talk about, that led to this whole thing. And secondly, we realized it's a trap. It's a pleasure trap. You just keep looking for something.
Okay. Would you mind talking a little bit about maybe, some of the challenges that you encountered, or how it affected your relationship when you were doing that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I kind of want to explain like how we even got the idea.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, at the very beginning, it really came about because really we saw each other 3 times a year, and then in the long distance relationship for like up to 3 years. So like I would see him for a week and it'll be almost like the holiday because someone needs to travel somewhere, and then you spend as much time as you can. So it's like every time we were together, it's like this like honeymoon, like, oh, I can't get enough of you, but finally we're together. And then it's like, oh, okay, goodbye. And then you're stuck with the phone calls, and it's just such a drastic difference. Like long distance is truly so hard. It forced us to build a lot of trust, to build a lot of communication. So that we had at the beginning. But then at some point, it was me who suggested, actually, I miss that physical comfort of someone being there with me, and you just can't provide that for me, like for these long periods of time. So for me, it was very clear that it was nothing emotional. It was more like, okay, I just want this physical kind of connection that I can't share with you the majority of time that we're together. Together in a relationship, but not physically together. So that's kind of how the idea kind of first came about from my end, and me suggesting it to him, and it kind of worked out in some way. But once we lived together, and once we were, really truly a couple together in Switzerland, it came up again, because during this whole time we were, doing a lot of self-development stuff. And at some point, we were really questioning, like, what is this love? And how come this love that we share for each other, and I really love you and you really love me, is it just limited to one special person in this world? Or am I capable, or is there a way for me to share more love, like this kind of deep love, with more than one person? So in our head, slowly, this very spiritual and very theoretical idea that, like, I am able to unconditionally love everyone, and I'm able to share myself with more than just one person. Like, why would I be so selfish to just be with one person? Like, that kind of idea, it kind of just like seeped into our minds, thinking that maybe that's more giving, maybe that's more loving, maybe we could test the boundaries of that and what love is. And that kind of like pushed us to experiment and see whether we could have a polyamorous relationship. And when we did try that, what we didn't realize was that that theory in mind didn't quite feel right, like within our hearts and within our bodies. Because deep down, we really actually wanted to commit to one another. I'm not sure at that time if we were mature enough or ready enough to actually, like Jáchym said, commit deeply and truly explore this connection here and find the adventure, me and him, in this world, like together. But so we started to kind of project this outward. And in that process, it was a lot of hurt, because it was kind of like this head and heart thing going on. In one way, we were trying to be like spiritually correct and spiritually more open and pushing ourselves to almost like quote unquote grow in this way. But really, it wasn't right. It wasn't right. We had love from the beginning. We didn't recognize love for what it was. We tried to find something else or find something more, but that wasn't it. And for me, this whole experience really taught me that just because you say yes to something, like I said to Jáchym, yes, go ahead. It's okay if you establish, a connection with someone else. Like, oh, it's okay to explore something else with someone, Even though I said yes to him, the moment I felt deep inside me that it's no longer right, I can change my mind. I can actually tell him and say no more. It doesn't feel good. But it took such a long time for me because I was scared. I was scared to set my boundaries at that point and to actually go, well, now that we've experienced, it doesn't feel good. I don't want more than one person, like more than us in this relationship. This is more than enough, and we got to focus on us. And so it brought out a lot of fear, because I thought the moment you kind of open up that can of worms, or you give your partner that freedom, or you give them that yes, it's like hard to reel it back in, because what if that's not what he wants? So in that whole time, there was hurt, there was kind of misalignment within ourselves. We were going with a very mindy idea of what we were trying to achieve, even though it didn't feel right. And then I really had to learn that, okay, what I'm feeling is valid. And at some point, I have to set my boundaries and actually have, a conversation about this. So it really ended quite badly, as in, by the time we committed to each other in a monogamous relationship, there was a lot of hurt. And there was a lot of hurt, and not because there was cheating. There was no cheating at all. There was full transparency, but more like what I allowed him to do, even though it didn't feel right, and what I was afraid to say, even though I knew that was the truth, but I was too scared to lose him, and that kind of thing. It brought up a lot of insecurities.
Okay. Since you went through all of that and you realized, that you prefer being monogamous, would you advise anyone who is in a relationship and maybe is considering, like, if about, trying polyamory or open relationships, what would you maybe tell them to consider if they're thinking about it?
Well, of course you can go ahead and do it. And I would write down what your motivation is for it. Why are you actually wanting to do it? What is driving you to explore that? Because the other thing that's an issue with this kind of setup is that it easily lends itself to dishonesty towards your own self, meaning you're opening yourself up to someone else or whatever because it's not quite right in the relationship. Or when it doesn't get quite right in the relationship and there's difficulties, you're covering it over by seeing other people, right? So there's the emotional maturity you need to actually be able to navigate this is quite a lot. You do need to have this honesty. And if you don't have the honesty, you're going to be hurting yourself and you're probably going to be hurting your partner because you're not coming from the right space. And I do think if you want to go into this direction, for us, it was very clear from the beginning, there has to be absolute transparency. There's no hiding. There's no whatever. Like if Natasha asks me something, I'm going to answer it. If I'm going to ask something, she's going to answer me. There's no hiding around. There's no beating around the bush. Okay. It has to be completely transparent and everything's always up for discussion. So if Natasha says no, then it's a no. When I say no, it's a no, or we have to discuss it, right? We do have to respect each other within that, and you have to respect your partner. So if you're going out for it to enhance the relationship, if you believe that it will enhance the relationship, then you have to bring your partner on board with it and actually see how does that impact each other. And so, that's what I would say. If you are gung-ho about actually wanting to try it, yeah, sure, go ahead and see what happens.
Okay. Natasha, do you have anything you want to contribute to that, or good?
I think definitely connecting with your intentions and really checking in with yourself, because I could imagine that this could work for certain people, but not very many, just because it's hard enough with one person. So imagine you times that by 2. So you have 2 emotional beings or more, I don't know, that you're trying to, connect with, work out conflicts and differences with, and you never know what this brings up in terms of insecurities and fears and doubts and distrust and whatever it is, it could bring up in your partner. It might sound good at the beginning, but once you move away from the theory and you text or you say to your partner, all right, I'm not coming home tonight. Well, I'm going to be with someone. Well, are they, your partner, going to be able to emotionally process that? And if they can, and it's okay, then it's okay. But if they can't, are they going to hold it in because they're the avoidant type, or are they going to actually be able to speak to you about how they truly feel? So it's extremely challenging. And like Jáchym said, sometimes it might sound like this great adventure and lots of pleasure, but there's like lots of landmines in between to really truly get it right, truly get it right for all the parties involved. And I think that level of sensitivity and pivoting and working things out, it's a lot more than just 2 people, right? So it's way more complicated, way more complex, a lot more emotions. So
and more time consuming.
Yeah. So like, do you have that space for your life? Otherwise, if you're not ready for that, or if you don't want to have that kind of thing, then what this might be showing is that you actually are chasing the pleasure. You are actually chasing something surface, something to feel good about, then that's maybe a different conversation.
Yeah. And that could be maybe something that probably needs to be explored through like maybe therapy or something, like why you're seeking this, like you're never happy, or I don't know, just a thought. I don't know if I heard or read somewhere while I was doing my research that you were going to get divorced at one point, and that is true. And I'm just curious, like, how did you not get divorced? Like, what did you guys do?
Yeah, we really hit a breaking point because Jáchym and I, we went down this path where we were misaligned, and there were a lot of truths hidden within ourselves that we didn't speak to one another. So it's like a train getting off course. It's off course. It's not going to the right destination, but you don't stop it and you don't change it. So it just keeps on getting more and more off course. And we kind of let that happen for a while. So by the time where we were really considering, okay, is this even worth it? What is left here? That snapshot was a lot of pain. Like every day we would wake up, we knew there was still love for each other, but it was so hard to connect to that love and feel that love because there was so much hurt between us. And whenever we talked about the issues that we were facing and what has happened and what, it didn't feel like it would go anywhere. It seemed like we were spinning in circles, having the same conversation. It was always ending up in tears. We would always walk away feeling more frustrated. And it really felt quite helpless. Like, is there anything left? Can we be happy together anymore? Those questions were really coming up. But what changed everything, and this is really the answer to your question, what shifted was when I one day really told Jáchym how badly I feel hurt inside and how just unhappy I was. Because until that point, we were trying to work things out, but it's like I didn't allow myself to break, if that makes sense. Like I had all this resentment and pain and sadness and disappointment, all this inside me. And yes, it would come out, but I did not show all of that ugliness to him. And so until that point, we kept spinning in circles trying to fix problems, but Jáchym didn't really know the severity or the impact that his actions and the whole dynamic we were in at that point had on me personally, like as a human being. And I was so scared to break. But I kind of had to because I was so unhappy. I didn't know what else to do. Like that was the only thing that was left. It's like, I just feel like this. Like I can't do this anymore. Literally, I was like, I can't do this anymore because I feel like this. And he and I was like, oh no. I've said it, it's out there now. Like he actually realizes what's going on inside me and just how not happy I am right now with him and this whole relationship. And I was like, oh, great. Now he's probably going to jump ship too. Cause who wants to be with a wife like this or who wants to salvage this? It's such a bad place to be. So that was what I was thinking. I was like, oh no. But then when I looked over at him, it was, we've repeated this again and again and again, this discussion. But in that moment, I saw that he something changed, something shifted. In his eyes, there was a recognition like, whoa, you feel like this and I have something to do with it. It's not just you. Like that's what's been happening within you. And I saw this empathy and this care and this connection that I didn't feel for a very, very long time. And that's because I broke open and he could actually see me. He could actually feel me. And I let him in that moment. So when anyone, doesn't matter if it's your spouse, your partner, or whoever, if you're very vulnerable and you're raw and you're honest and you openly say, I need help because this is not working. This is how I feel and I'm suffering in this way. a sane human being will offer you help, and they will care, and they will try to love you. And that's exactly what happened, because we were like going at it like this conflict was some kind of like, I don't know, some battle we were trying to tackle, right? But in that moment there was no battle. It wasn't about the conflict, it wasn't about the arguments or the fights. It's like about this human being who's hurt, and how can I help her? So I saw that in him, and I was like, whoa, he still cares, and he sees it, and he feels it, and it matters. And I could see it kind of like in his eyes, kind of like, okay, well, like, what do we do now? Okay, now that I know this, like, how, like, what are we gonna do about this? And I'm like, whoa, this is different. I feel like there's actually hope now, because we're binding together as a team again and trying to solve this together, versus like, oh, this puzzle that like never fit and we couldn't find an answer to.
It's beautiful. Just just a moment that you had right there. It really shows you how important it is to be open and vulnerable, because a lot of us are scared of that. And I know, like, a lot of us have that fear of, if we're vulnerable, like the person's gonna leave us or not like us. But you have to do it, because it's better to know. If they don't like you, you don't want to be with someone like that anyway, if they reject you or something like that. And I feel like it is a way to kind of get closer to someone if they see that. And like you said, it's kind of also an opportunity for them to kind of take care of you and make you feel better. And people might not know, like, he didn't really know, I guess, that like maybe he was hurting you in that way. So just something to take away from there. That's great. Okay, so I feel bad now that I feel like I've been asking you guys too much about maybe bad stuff in your relationship. I'm like, I don't want guys to feel sad.
This is important because so many people think relationships are just, nice and beautiful and whatever. And no, they aren't. You will face your blind spots, and you will face the difficulty. And the question is, are you going to stick with it, or are you not? Are you guys just going to jump to the next person? So it is actually vital to bring this out, because people need to know that it doesn't matter what kind of relationship form you are choosing, there are challenges and there are difficulties and there are things that you'll struggle with.
Okay. I feel bad. I'm like, oh God. So I'm always curious about how, couples, or, just people in general, you meet people in your life, you date, and how, like, what's different about this person that you're with now that made you kind of be like, okay, this is the person I want to be with? So what was it about each other that you were like, okay, this is my person? Or
well, let me reframe that a little bit, because like I mentioned, there was love that whole time, right? Like, we truly love and care for one another. So at some point, after that moment I just shared with you, where we were like deep down in the dark hole in our relationship, and we're like, this train has gone off course for way too long, and now it cracked, and how is he gonna react? But he recognized that. He recognized the crack. It's like, okay, I think let's try to fix this, right? So that was the point we were at. And then from there, we actually did a lot of work. It took some time. And we first tried to navigate it ourselves. Then we worked with healers and coaches. At that point, we had to pick up some pretty big pieces. So outside help was necessary. It really was. And at one point, we actually did a 3, how many days? 7 day, a whole week retreat, mostly on this relationship, but separately, kind of like going on our own journey at the same time, though, coming together to discuss stuff when we needed to, but mostly it was kind of like self-reflective, on our own, learning from this experience. And at the end, now this is kind of like what you're asking, but in a very specific way, a moment in time, in our relationship. That healer, that facilitator for that retreat, brought us together at the very end, after 7 days apart and some conversations. She asked, do you still want to be together? And now imagine you spend a full week reflecting and taking on responsibility and recognizing the part you played in hurting another person, in ruining this marriage, in letting things get that bad. So, it was very heavy. It was really heavy at that point, because it's not a matter of as simple of, oh, he hurt me. Oh, like, you got to stop that. No, it's, I did that to you, and then you did that to me. And then it got worse and worse and worse. So with our eyes wide open to everything we've done, we were asked, well, do you still choose him? Is he still going to choose you? And it was the craziest thing, because with all these like really, really vulnerable emotions, like really raw, feeling really not good, seeing honestly and transparently what we've done. Like, yes, you can have the greatest love, and man, can you really hurt those you choose to love too, right? So we really recognize that, and yet we still chose one another. It's strange. So that, I think, that says a great deal about forgiveness, of our capacity to heal and to recover, and how the past doesn't really need to define you. And that, yes, there's this person in front of me, but who I'm saying yes to at that point isn't the same Jáchym who made the mistakes, crossed the boundaries, or, hurt me and whatever. It's not him. It's this vulnerable, honest, broken down guy who's ready to create a new, a better, like an exceptional relationship with me now. He's grown, he's learned, and he's forgiven himself, and he's asking forgiveness from me. That's who I'm saying yes to. So yes, I can say yes to that new person. So it's not really like we've been in love with the same person the whole time, because if Jáchym was here and he was that version of him back then, he's sitting here, I would not be in this relationship right now. But he's grown, and like, we've grown up, and so that's who I'm saying yes to. It's not the same person anymore. So I think there's a lot of capacity in our hearts to actually to forgive, but mostly to learn first, because unless you learn from what's happened, what are you forgiving, really?
And what about you? Yeah.
Well, I mean, so you're in the situation, and what you gonna do? Okay, why would you walk away? That's the basic question. Like, okay, if you walk away, you're gonna enter up back in the dating game. If you're back in the dating game, well, the chances of going down the pleasure trap is fairly big, again, and all of that. So there's a bunch of uncertainties that you don't know, and there's still love and there's still connection with Natasha. So why would I walk away from that? I mean, the hopes I'm going to find something better. There's always the mind always says, well, there's something better, it's a better job, or the other person is going to be better, or X, Y, Z. Sorry, it's all BS. It really is. You got something here, and just because you had the challenges doesn't mean that it can't blossom into something beautiful. And so it ultimately, it was not really a choice of the mind, it was a choice of the heart. And I can't really explain that.
Nice. Thank you for answering that. So now I know you guys have your you have a business together, right? So I was wondering if you have any advice for couples who might be considering doing something like that together, working together, because sometimes there's conflicts there, or how to not let work and affect your relationship, and anything you have to offer in terms of that.
Right. So I mean, ultimately it takes one person. Okay, if you are in the position and you're like, okay, I want to actually work on the relationship, then go for it, because you're not really working on a relationship, you're working on yourself. Okay, you're working on yourself. So what had to happen, for example, from my side, is I lost my father when I was 6 years old to suicide. And so that gave an impression to me about love and what love means, and that love is painful. And so I had this dynamic playing out in our relationship where I'm like, well, I love her and want her close, but not too close. Because if she's too close, I'm going to get hurt. Now, I wasn't conscious of this. There was this push and pull happening. And so you can improve a relationship by simply owning what's happening within you and actually looking at that rather than blaming it on your partner. Because that's what we usually do. Oh, well, the partner, if he will be more masculine, if she will be more feminine or more forgiving or whatever it is, right? It's always the other person. Okay. But in a relationship, you actually influence each other and you're part of the pattern. You're part of what's been happening within the relationship. And when you change the dynamic that's happening within you, you're not going to respond the same way. And when you're not responding the same way, the other person can't do the same dance. You used to do a tango together and you start changing your step to a cha-cha-cha or whatever, you're going to be different, right? And your partner can't do the tango anymore with you. And that is something that's really vital to notice, because we do get a lot of people who are like, well, I want to do something, but my partner doesn't. And it's this kind of idea that we have to be in it together. And yes, you can do it together. But in our relationship, there were points where I was in it and I wanted to do something and I was caring for the relationship, and Natasha was less caring for the relationship, and vice versa. So it's not like you have to be together and have to face together. Yes, you can. And we do recommend it as well. But if you're the one with the desire, follow that desire.
So now I'm going to ask you guys about, I'm very curious, everyone has experienced, lockdown, and, it's affected relationships in different ways. So I'm wondering how it has affected you guys.
Let me just answer and then Natasha can add to it. But basically, look, we have been traveling since 2018. We've been working together. We're going to the gym together. We're waking up together. We're eating breakfast together. We're doing the business together. We're all time together. Okay. So for us, it is a very little change. Yes, it is a change in terms of we're not traveling anymore. We have settled. And that is different. We're not exploring as much. We're not going out to restaurants all the time and seeing different places and whatever. So that is different. But in terms of our closeness together, not much has changed. And for many couples, it has, because you're working 2 different jobs. You're not seeing each other for 10 hours or something per day. You're seeing each other on the weekend. You're seeing each other in the morning, maybe at night, depending on what kind of schedules you have. And suddenly you're thrust together into one space. And now you're together. And that is a big shift for a lot of couples. For us, it wasn't.
And how do you not, for the, maybe, for people who maybe are having difficulty with, spending a lot of time together, what would you tell them? How do you not get sick of each other?
Yeah. Well, I almost want to kind of break this down into the 3 things that we just normally teach when someone joins our program or when we coach someone. It's just the 3 fundamental things. And I mean, when you're in really close quarters and either you're getting sick of each other or your conflicts are getting kind of out of control, or you're noticing that, oh, wait a second, there's a lot here that I didn't realize and there's a lot to work on. This whole quarantine can bring up different facets with your relationships. So for some, it's a great thing. They realize, wow, I love family life. Can't believe how lucky I am to spend time with, my loved ones. Then great. But for a lot of people, it brings up a lot of the conflicts and the differences. And, you have to share the space. You have to share that time. So what are you going to do with it? So what we always teach is for people to learn how to navigate communication and conflicts. So, you're probably together because there's a connection, you love one another, but can you bring that in within your home, within your life in a harmonious way? And there are some really key skills to know how do you merge 2 worlds together? Because it's really not about my way, your way. Okay, now we try to compromise in the middle. When, everyone's kind of feeling, I still like it my way. But, you've made an agreement, so stick to it. That's not harmonious. That feels like we're just sharing this pie because we have to. Let's just, cut it in the middle. It's not creative. It's not nourishing. So one of the things we teach is like, okay, learn the skills for conflict, for communication, so that your love is harmonious. So even though you're different people, you still find a peaceful way of being together, like a joyful way of being together. And another thing, because we mostly work with the wives, the women within the relationship, it's like, do you know how your man works? Like, can you get inside his head and actually understand his brain, his mind, and the differences between you two? Because it's totally different. So, for example, if someone's stuck in the quarantine and the husband and you start to have some kind of friction, do you know why he's being rubbed off the wrong way? A lot of the times, the woman is completely oblivious as to what the husband needs, like what he interprets respect to be, how he wants to feel appreciated, like all of these things, how he wants to be heard, how he wants to lead, but maybe is not given the opportunity to at home. All of these things, it's like how the man functions. And so many women do so much within the household, do so much of the life management, like the household management, and then the prepping for this, and then the social events, and thinking we're like doing so much for everyone, we're doing everything, we're giving so much, and he's like, what are you running around for? Like, what about me? And you're like, I've been doing this for you the whole time. And it's just like a mismatch, because you actually don't understand what he really needs. And then the last one, and I think that's really key, especially in the quarantine time, we call it like unleashing the inner goddess, but it's like, can you make your own self happy? Can you take good care of yourself? Because, so many relationships really go wrong when someone is already unhappy within themselves. And then a lot of the blame can happen because, there's someone around you and who better to to point fingers at, and get annoyed at, and to get angry at, and irritated at, So a lot of it, it's like, do you know how to take care of yourself? Do you know how to set boundaries? Do you know what you need for yourself, so that you can then extend that and ask your partner for it? So I think these three pieces, it really changed everything for us, and it's what we teach. And I think especially in the quarantine times and this crazy COVID time, it's even more important. It's like, all right, there's love, but can you coexist in a harmonious way? It's like, okay, yes, you're married, but do you actually understand what he needs from the relationship? Or are you only focused on, okay, well, you got to give me this, and you got to do this, right? Do you understand your guy? Do you? And then the third one is like, okay, not just what he needs to give you. Can you take care of yourself? Can you show up as your best self, so that he can love you? And a lot of the times we're so dependent on our partner to give us everything. It's like, no. Can you give that for yourself? Do you recognize what you need yourself? So I think all these three things, it makes this quarantine time much easier to handle. And then it's for your own well-being, not just to get along with others, but like to survive this time on your own too.
Awesome. Those are really great lessons, especially the whole self-care thing and like loving yourself. That's just definitely something I've been working on too. So now this is a pretty good segue. I can't believe we've been talking for almost an hour. That's crazy. Like, it always goes by so fast. So I wanted to give you guys some time to talk about your coaching program, and then any other things you want to promote. I know you have a podcast, your YouTube channel, social media. Anything else you want to just talk about?
Right. So the three things that Natasha has talked about, there are three pillars of a program called The Cherished Wife. And it is really for women who are in a relationship and they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel cherished really in the end. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And that is with intimacy, you know, the guy is maybe defensive or pulls away, is maybe ignoring her. And so this program is for those kind of women to turn things around and really bring back the passion, the love, the connection, because you can have the dream come true relationship, even if it's right now feels hopeless, right? Or you feel helpless in this moment. And a lot of times these kind of women are overdoing things. You know, they're really trying hard to fix it, but actually by trying so hard, they're pushing him even further away, right? And so that is really at the heart of this program, is to learn the relationship dynamic, to understand it, to learn the vital skills relating to communication, relating to certain ways of being with your man that actually is going to enhance the relationship rather than push it further down into what you don't want to go to. Like, you don't want to go down there, right? And so that is what we're really working on.
And for a lot of issues that come up, like if you have hit a road, what is it called? A roadblock or a bump yeah, along the road. Lots of roadblocks and bumps. But if you find yourself hitting one of those things, then most definitely what you might notice changing is how you're communicating to one another. Cold shoulder, a bit defensive, a bit passive aggressive. I don't know, but it starts to show up in how you start to interact with one another. So if you want to kind of troubleshoot that, we have a wonderful quiz you can take and see how your communication is, because it's like a bit of a pulse, right? So you can go to yourexceptionalrelationship.com/understand, and then you can get that quiz, and it's fun, and then you'll get your results and figure out kind of where you're at.
Right. Awesome. And I mean, in terms of podcasts and YouTube channel and all of that, we're actually in the middle of restarting the podcast and a YouTube channel. We're probably starting a new one that's more dedicated to the relationship topic, and especially around the work with women. So that will be coming soon, but we can't point people right now there. But we are quite active on Pinterest. So if you are on Pinterest, you can find us at Your Exceptional Relationship.
Oh, nice. All right. I'll definitely put the links to all of that in the show notes and video description as well. So it's Pinterest and then Your Exceptional Relationship, right? And I have the website here too for that assessment you guys have. All right. So any last words, any other thing you want to offer to the viewers in terms of relationships or anything?
Well, we really chose, because we've been working as coaches for many, many years, but we really chose to be together, work on this together, and to share our coaching specifically now for relationships, especially these romantic and committed relationships. It's because, you know, like every single human being is really here on earth to love, and there's so much love to give, and we want to receive so much love every single day. We want that feeling. But the question Jáchym and I ask every day on this job as we help people and couples is like, man, the person you have chosen to love for the rest of your life are usually those who you really hurt the most. You know, like the pain goes real deep too. And no matter how much you kind of work on yourself, it seems to be kind of that blind spot. It's like behind closed doors where like still old patterns come up. And we really want to encourage you to not be afraid to reach out for help. Yes, it might be a sensitive topic. Yes, you know, we're here, and thanks to you, we're having this open discussion. You are asking these questions about our past, and we're happy to share it. And, you know, we're happy to help, you know, people with their love lives. But if there's one change you can make, you know, is to be able to receive love better and also to love better, and to do that in a way where we don't have this hurt, like kind of like a double-edged sword. Like that deep love doesn't need to have that hurt and that pain. You don't need the fights and the arguments in order to have a long-term relationship. Forget all that. You know, we're trying to redefine what a beautiful, exceptional relationship really is. And bickering isn't okay. Nagging at one another, being passive aggressive, it really hurts. Like, it's not okay. So if you deep down feel like, well, everyone thinks it's normal, it's what old couples do, maybe I should put up with it, maybe not. If you feel in you want change, something could be better, then that's valid. And let that push you to do something about it, because you can get so much out of it when you truly transform these relationships. You can gain so much more, and you don't have to be stuck in that kind of cycle, in that past pattern.
Right. And to add on to that, it goes into a very similar direction. And that is, you either are choosing love or you're choosing fear and insecurity. Okay. And most of the negative, well, not most, pretty much all of the negative patterns are based in fear. When you're nagging, when you're bickering, when you're blaming, when you're shaming, it usually has to do with fear. It has to do with not being good enough, not feeling seen. It has to do with your insecurities, right? Fears are based in insecurities. Insecurities are based in fears. As long as you're choosing that, your relationship is going to have a difficult time, and you got to say no to them. And instead, you got to choose love. And some people think, well, choosing love means to be okay with everything. No. Love can be fierce. Love can say no. Love can be like, no, that's actually not good for you, and I'm going to say no to this because that's my boundary. That's self-love. And so that is at its heart is really what people need to start doing, is to start choosing love. Keep choosing love and keep showing up for yourself and for what you actually want to create and have in your life, because no one else is going to do it for you. You're the only one who's going to create that for you. And if you're not stepping up, you're going to go to your grave not having lived your life the way you want it.
Wow.
That's the hard, cold truth. But if you actually embrace it, it will help you to shift and then actually make the steps and take the steps to create the life and the relationships that are so deeply fulfilling that you can wake up next to the person and be like, wow, I'm the luckiest person alive to be with this wonderful partner.
That was great. I wanted to clap when you were like giving us the hard truth. I'm like, yeah, exactly. I love it. I definitely appreciate the, I'm the kind of person I like to keep it 100. Like, some people don't like to hear, the truth, but it's important for us to grow and everything. So thank you. That was awesome. Like, I didn't want to interrupt you, but in my mind, I was clapping, I was cheering. I'm like, yes, it's awesome. So thank you. It's a great way to end this. So thank you, Natasha and Jáchym. This feels so bad. I really appreciate your time. I hope I didn't mess up your name too much, but it was a great conversation, and thank you. I learned so much, and I'm sure everyone else listening did too. And please check them out on their website. Everything is in the show notes and video description. And thank you guys so much. I wish you the best in everything, and I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy. And
same to you.
Same to you.
And that is it for this episode of the How to Relationship podcast. Thanks again to Natasha and Jáchym for being on. I really, really appreciate it. Make sure to check out their links in the show notes and video description. If you want to follow the podcast, you can follow it at How to Relationship Podcast on Instagram. And you can also find the podcast on Facebook as well. Just search How to Relationship Podcast, and we have a YouTube channel as well. If you want to actually see the couples, I always recommend people actually watch the videos just because it's nice to see them kind of interact with each other. I think it's really, really cute. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it all this way, I really appreciate it, especially if you listen to all the other episodes. I really appreciate it. I'm excited for some of the upcoming episodes, so I hope you stick around for that as well. Some really, really good ones coming up. Again, I'm your host, Anaït Lucia, and I'll see you next time on the How to Relationship podcast.